What is the funniest thing you've ever witnessed right in front of you? A group of us often went to my friend Ian's house at lunchtime in high school. Every day, we'd walk out of the school gates, go to the spa, get a pot noodle, cup noodles, I think in the States, and a sliced loaf to share. Then we'd walk 5 minutes up the hill to his parents' house. Generally, we'd just use his kitchen, making toast, boiling the kettle for tea, and the pot noodles. Then we'd settle in front of the TV, eating, drinking, and watching whatever was on that day. This was our ritual almost every lunchtime for the latter part of our high school years. One day, though, it was different. Sometimes my friend would forego the pot noodle because he had been left food by his mom from his previous night's meal. Today, it was a plate of spaghetti bolognese. As he brought it out of the microwave, a delicious smell filled the kitchen. We all looked longingly at his hearty Italian lunch and then back at our dreary pot noodles. Most of us were resigned to our gray meal, all except Mark. As we sat in the front room, Ian sat pride of place in his father's chair directly in front of the TV, with his large plate of bolognese on a coffee table. The rest of us were spread out on the large sofa. None of us had noticed Mark disappear until he re-entered the sitting room with the pneumatic air rifle over his shoulder. Sometimes we'd shoot targets and stuff down the garden after lunch while smoking cigarettes outside, so seeing the air rifle was nothing new. Casually, Mark walks over to Ian's bolognese, points the barrel just inside the bolognese at the edge of the plate. Ian's face is suddenly pale.
Say hello to my little friend. Mark then pulls the trigger.
In an instant, the bolognese went from the plate to covering literally everything on the side of the room Ian was sitting on. Pieces of delicious spag bol are everywhere, hanging off paintings all over the wall, dripping off the radiator, covering porcelain ornaments, the side of the TV. And also Ian, his white school shirt now stained red with Italian tomatoes. Ian was so shocked he didn't say anything. Mark too was shocked because he'd pumped up the pneumatic air rifle well beyond the recommended amount and was now looking at the result of a pelletless blast of air meeting the bolognese and bolognese meeting the living room. Needless to say, the rest of us were in immediate hysterics, tears of laughter at Mark fruitlessly trying to clean up the mess. Ian raging at Mark about his parents' living room. Obviously, we could never return to Ian's after this incident. Sometimes we'd forget, but then chuckle at the bolognese incident. So yeah, Ian turns into Tony Montana after being pestered by spaghetti bolognese. Pasta la vista, baby. Sorry, I had to do it. Story 2. Back around 2005 or 2006, I dated a girl whose daughter was a high school cheerleader. We sat close to the cheerleader so she could watch her daughter. During the first half, I noticed a guy dressed as a girl. Due to how awful he looked and the fact he was walking around the stadium, it looked like a bad high school frat prank. There was a lady sitting next to me that was a band parent. This lady was hardcore. She had marching band patches on her jacket that went back to 1988. She and her group see the football game as the warm-up for the band's halftime show. Then it's halftime. It's an away game, so the other band hits the field. They take a long time, and so our team's band was not going to get to play. They get freaking livid. Now, I understand their anger, but these things do happen. What are you going to do? I don't know what you would do, but they decided they were going to take the damn field. It was a cacophony of noise as they scrambled to their feet. As they are making their way to the field, they are stopped by the home school's people. Screw it, they decide to go onto the sidelines next to the cheerleaders. They will not be stopped. Now it's starting to make me laugh. The football team start to hit the field. The cheerleaders decide they are going to do a routine to their own music. That music starts, while the band decided they are going to play their own halftime show. And all of this coincides with the kickoff for the second half. Now it's simply freaking awesome. The cheerleaders are trying to hear their music. The football game starts, and the band starts the cantina music from Star Wars. The game has started, pom-poms are flying, flags are spinning, hip-hop and Star Wars music are fighting to be heard, and the lady next to me in the band jacket is watching them like a hawk. And holy hell, here comes the transvestite guy again. He stops right in front of our whole section, stops for an awkward 3 count, and then walks away. Everybody in the section sees this guy except for the band jacket lady. Make no mistake, I'm loving every second of this. I said, "What was that all about?" to nobody in particular. She turns to me and says, "They wouldn't let the band on the field." And that, my friends, is how you do a halftime show. Story 3. Substitute high school chemistry teacher demonstrating reaction between calcium carbide and water. Tests for the presence of acetylene with burning splint. Experiment instructions emphasize multiple times that only a single crystal of calcium carbide should be used. Jerk poured the whole bottle into the petri dish and then sent the class nerd to the office when he tried to interrupt the guy. When he actually tested for acetylene, his whole upper body was engulfed in a fireball that shot up, hit the ceiling, and left a black soot ring. The guy was okay, except for every hair on his head. Ooh, burn. Sucks he got sent to the office though, but I'm sure that was the least of his concerns, right? Story 4. My elderly father, a portly and somewhat immobile gentleman, he is given to doing dad things, pulling his trousers up far past his waist with his shirt neatly tucked under his belt. On his belt is clipped a 1990s Nokia phone in its original case and immaculately preserved. He's very proud of it. Because of his protruding belly, when he sits, he sometimes accidentally engages his phone, dialing a random number. So one day he sits down at home, the landline, house phone starts to ring, so he picks it up and demands to know who's there. No one answers. He then proceeds to dial 1471 on the house phone to ring the caller back. As he is doing this, his mobile phone on his waist starts to ring. Somewhat in a panic, he hates to miss any calls. He fumbles around to answer his mobile phone while still holding the house phone receiver with his other hand, almost dropping both. He bellows, "Hello?" into his mobile. No answer. He quickly puts the house phone to his other ear and realizing it has been answered at the other hand, he shouts, hold on, 1 minute please." Switches to the other receiver shouting, "Hello, hello," even louder, switches back, and so on and so forth. I sat opposite him, holding a sandwich in mid-bite for the entire time, wondering if he was witnessing what was really happening. Story 5. The funniest thing I have ever seen happened one fine night during college. Some friends of mine and I were out at a bar drinking far too much. After a couple of hours, we started playing pool. I have a friend who we shall call Jim, who is normally horrible at pool, but as he drinks, he becomes a master for some reason. I mean, he runs tables for as long as he wants to play, but he has to be completely wrecked. He has just won his 8th or 9th game in a row when a new challenger appears. The challenger happened to be a little person. He brought his own cue stick and a step stool, which he only needed if the shot was pretty far away from the edge. He could make most normal shots without it. Now, this guy was a pretty good player, and at this point it was towards 2 in the morning and there weren't really anyone left who wanted to play. These two played game after game. All the while Jim is making short jokes. The dude was getting pretty annoyed, but as Jim was obviously hammered, he was letting it slide. So partway through their last game, the vertically impaired fella was walking around the table trying to find a shot. He finally found one he liked, but after lining it up, he decided he needed a stool. Jim walks up behind him and says, verbatim, "Let me give you a hand, little guy," and proceeds to pick the man up. Cool as a cucumber, the guy makes his shot. Jim is absolutely laughing hysterically at this point and sets him down. The guy then puts his cue stick down, turns around and punches Jim square in the nuts. Jim goes to his knees. The guy says, "I'm not so little now, am I?" and then proceeds to rough Jim up. My friends and I started laughing pretty much immediately. After a little bit, we all pulled the guy off Jim, apologized, and bought the guy a beer with Jim's money. We then took Jim home. Story 6. I once saw a man fall down an escalator that was moving up in Las Vegas. It takes a moment to picture this, but it was hilarious. The man was clearly buzzed out of his mind and just started rolling down the stairs very slowly. It was so slow, in fact, that the escalator was keeping up with him, so he was basically just kinda tumbling in place. He got up a good bit of momentum and reached the bottom, at which point the escalator took him back to the top and the whole process started over again. 2 girls ran up to help him. They were not dressed to save a person. They realized this was a 250, 270 ball of humanity and decided to run away down the uphill escalator. It was like watching Indiana Jones. After about 90 seconds, he came to and got up, looking around like he hadn't fallen down an escalator. Then his buddies came walking back and asking where the hell he was. They had missed the most monumental moment of this guy's life, but I hadn't. Oh my God, I desperately hope this is true, and the only sad thing about this story is that it was not caught on tape. Anyway, since you're already here, please don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out on any of my future uploads and some hilarious stories just like that last one. Now let's get back to the video. Story 7. I was on a crowded train and I saw one girl pickpocket a phone from another, particularly pretty by the way, girl. I also saw the pretty girl see the first girl take the phone and the pretty girl gesturing for me to keep quiet. The pretty girl then proceeded to take the first girl's sunglasses, hat, phone, spare undies with cartoon frogs on it, and probably some other stuff I couldn't remember, as well as some other things she had already stolen from other people, like another pair of sunglasses and some wallets. Note, she did not take her own phone back. So first girl gets off the train, pretty girl follows. I follow them both because it's hilarious. Me and pretty girl followed her to a coffee shop where she proceeded to calmly settle down for a rest, probably looking for more targets. She still hasn't noticed anything is missing. I sit in the shop watching first girl while pretty girl goes to the bathroom. When she returns from the bathroom, she notes down first girl's details from her phone and puts on the glasses and hat and calls her own phone, still in the possession of first girl. First girl goes as if to ignore the call and then realizes it's coming from her own phone, and her bemusement is hilarious. She tentatively answers the phone and pretty girl says, "Well, haven't you been a bad girl?" First girl's full name from first girl's address. "You made a big mistake when you mess with me. You don't know who I am. You don't know what I'm capable of." As she's talking on the phone, she walks over to first girl, who sees her and says, "That's my frickin' hat." To which pretty girl replies, "These are your freaking glasses too, but this pair aren't yours, are they?" Shows another pair of glasses she lifted from first girl, and "This isn't your wallet, is it? Nor is this one, or this one, or this one." Shows each lifted wallet in turn. "Now, if you don't mind, I'll take my phone back along with everything else you lifted from people." First girl is stunned and complies, handing over the phone plus another stolen one and some more wallets. Pretty girl then hands over first girl's phone, hat, and sunglasses, and I'm just standing next to pretty girl watching the whole spectacle unfold before me. First girl gets up to make a hurried escape, and just as she turns away, pretty girl says, just one more thing." First girl turns around to look at pretty girl again, and pretty girl pulls down the front of her trousers and pants to reveal pretty girl's cartoon frog covered undies that she had changed into in the bathroom and says, "Ribbit." First girl runs. We spent the rest of the day laughing our bums off and tracking down as many of the people whose phones and wallets we had rescued as we could, 5 in the end, and returning them, making sure to tell the full story to each one. At the end of the day, we took the remaining items to a police station and handed them in, along with the identity and address of first girl, still laughing, of course. The dialogue in this is obviously not remembered perfectly, but between us, we did a pretty good job of recalling it. Oh, did I mention that pretty girl is called Mia? She is currently looking stunning in a yellow tank top and matching boy shorts, and we're in love. It's a sort of thing. This happened 4.5 months ago. The frog panties are framed and hanging on our wall, and we always initiate fun times by exposing it to each other and saying, "Ribbit." Story 8. So I'm sitting outside of Bowden's Sourdough Bakery in San Francisco near the Fisherman's Wharf and see the guy come out with one of their bread bowls full of soup. Now, if you've ever been here, let me tell you, the seagulls are everywhere and pretty aggressive about trying to get your food. So this guy goes down and sits down and starts eating his clam chowder, and the birds are everywhere squawking like seagulls do. And you can see it's irritating this guy. So he makes the mistake of tearing off a piece of bread and throwing it to the gulls. He thought it was bad before, but once they knew they could get food out of him, he was surrounded. So one of the seagulls lands near the guy and is standing with its back to him about 5 feet away. The guy gets up, walks over, and kicks this bird. As soon as he turns around, he realizes this was a mistake. I would say there were 50 seagulls on this guy's food. He then screams, "Oh, I see how it is. You send your crazy friend to distract me while you jerks enjoy my food." It was quite funny. All right, so I've seen a seagull drop out of the sky and snatch a sandwich from a boy's hand, so seagulls are pure evil, at least when it comes to food. Story 9. I was getting dressed in our bedroom and was bare from the waist down, standing at the end of the bed. My wife must have seen something behind me poking out from under the bed and went down on 2 knees to fish it out. I really had not been paying close attention to how close she was and bent over to pick up my drawers just as she straightened up with both of her hands full of whatever she had fished out from under the bed. As you might imagine, she was surprised to see my bum a mere few inches from her face, and as a result, she accidentally lost her balance and, instead of dropping whatever she had and steadying herself on the bed, she held onto it for dear life and slowly tipped over, falling face first into my behind. I was, as you might imagine, surprised as hell that there was suddenly a face up in there. I stood up so quickly and clenched so tight that I locked her nose firmly between my cheeks, and then time stood still. I was shocked and stood like a statue in stunned silence. She started screaming a muffled wail into it, and as we both wondered what to do next, she started flailing wildly to find a purchase, and suddenly she realized she could drop whatever she was holding and push herself away. She grabbed my bum and shoved so hard she nearly pushed me halfway across the room. She sprung up and ran to the restroom so fast she could almost hear the Doppler effect. I started washing her face while both crying and laughing at the same time. To this day, all I have to do to get her to cringe in fear and embarrassment is mention the bum bum incident. Story 10. I watched a group of special needs adults ride go-karts, and one of them would drive halfway around the track perfectly, then just slam his brakes for no reason. Another crashed into the wall, and when the go-kart employee put it back in the right path, she yelled, "It won't go, it won't go." The employee had no idea why it wouldn't and then asked her if she was pressing the gas or the brake. All of a sudden, she took off and hit every wall till the end of that lap. The ending was the best part. When the employee flagged them to come in to park, one girl drove straight at him and he had to jump over her cart. She hit the wall behind him, ricocheted off, and kept going. Another female went into the parking area but never slowed down and drove straight into the already parked cart in front of her. She hit it so hard that she had a big booger hanging out of her nose afterwards. Then the girl, who ignored the employee flagging people in earlier, finally came around again and the guy was waving the flag again at her and she almost forgot, and at the last second turned into the parking area. However, she hits the median of the two lanes they had for the carts to park. Her cart is stuck in the concrete median with her front wheel still spinning. This is not me making fun of special needs people at all, but if you were watching this live, you would have laughed your bums off too. Alright, I'm sorry, but who the hell thought it was a good idea to let all of that happen? Story 11. I was with my extended family at a local amusement park when I was 10. My uncle and I went on a boat ride where you drive the boat around a small track. You could drive the boat freely, but it had no throttle control. It's a pretty boring ride unless you have someone like my uncle to ride with. Halfway through the ride, he suddenly turned the boat completely sideways and blocked the track. Since the boats had no throttle control, everyone bumped into us and got stuck as well. With a boat pileup holding up the ride, the attendants came to help my uncle, who started acting like he had special needs and couldn't understand what they were telling him to do. Every time they got him going straight again, he would keep it turning until he got stuck again. The attendants tried to get me to tell him what to do, and I did, but my uncle would just do the opposite and keep turning sideways. Eventually, the attendant jumped on the boat and steered it the rest of the way while my uncle just smiled at him. Right after we got out of the boat, my uncle stopped the act and just said to the attendants, "Thanks for the ride." The combination of seeing my uncle act this way, the frustration of the ride attendants, and the embarrassment of my mom and aunt made it one of the best days I ever had at that place. My uncle passed away from cancer 6 years later, and I miss him terribly. Luckily, he was always doing stuff like that, so I have a ton of great memories with him. Story 12. My university choir went to Finland one year, which was an amazing experience. The day we arrived, my brain was a bit foggy from the jet lag, but I wanted to take advantage of being there, so I went with my friends to explore Helsinki. I was walking down the street talking to one of my friends next to me when I walked straight into a pole. I wasn't hurt at all, just surprised, but as I collected myself, I noticed that the only person who had noticed aside from my friend was this random Finnish dude on the other side of the street who was intensely cracking up from what he had seen. I think the sight of him laughing uproariously at my stupid moment is one of the funniest sights I've ever seen. Alright, so if you like these stories and they ripped you up a new one, here's more because YouTube thinks you're gonna love this. I'll catch you in that video, and thanks for laughing and hanging with me on this one.